So thank you all for joining us this morning. A special thank you to our hosts, the Chelsea Collaborative, and Chief Operating Officer Jeannie Paulino. Chelsea Collaborative is a one-stop shop for empowerment, for justice, for education, and for opportunity. We thank you for everything you do to make the Latino community healthier and stronger. And thank you to my good friend, Ava Malona, the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. And to our guest speakers, Angelica and Katie, who will share their stories about the Trump administration's assaults on their lives and the lives of other immigrants. We thank you for being here, and we extend our assistance to you and your families whenever and wherever you need it. Since the day that Donald Trump announced his presidential campaign in 2015, he has singled out immigrants as the target of his administration. His now infamous quote, vilifying Mexican immigrants as drug dealers and criminals, foreshadowed his own criminality, cruel and anti-immigrant agenda. Trump's high-profile policy changes are well known. The Muslim travel ban, retaliation against sanctuary cities, termination of temporary protected status, and DACA protections, and the forcible family separations at the border. And of course, his maniacal push to construct a ridiculous wall on our southern border. But it has been through under-the-radar changes to our immigration policies that the Trump administration has distorted our immigration system beyond recognition. These are the multiple executive orders, memoranda, guidance, rulemakings, and informal directives that President Donald Trump has used to surreptitiously remake our immigration system and to stoke fears into the lives of millions of immigrants across our country. As a nation, we have long recognized that America's story is an immigrant story. Immigrants founded and built this country. My family came here from Ireland looking for a better life, and so many others like them. Millions of them took the same journey from their countries of origin. But President Trump is trying to wipe out immigrants from the American story, shutting the door on them, stripping away their protections, rights, and avenues to relief. But we have an obligation to stand up against every callous, anti-immigrant action of the Trump administration. And we have an obligation to provide safety, security, respect, and opportunity to the 11 million undocumented immigrants who enrich our nation. My office compiled this report in an effort to shine a light on these lesser-known changes which have taken place during the time that Donald Trump has been the President of the United States. But these are still brutal assaults on our immigrant, refugee, and asylee communities. When viewed in totality, this report, which covers the first 2 years of the Trump administration, these changes expose a systematic effort to upend the lives of nearly every single immigrant in our country. And as the report outlines, these policy changes are having major impacts on 3 separate fronts. First, the Trump administration has constructed an immigration system hostile to those it should be serving. President Trump has rewritten the rules to make it as difficult as possible for immigrants to obtain or retain legal status in the United States. Take, for example, Trump's efforts on refugees. Trump set the cap for fiscal year 2018 refugee admissions at a record low 45,000. Compare this to President Obama's cap for the previous year, which was 110,000. But in fiscal year 2018, the Trump administration only resettled 22,491 refugees, less than half of his own 45,000 cap. Then President Trump announced that the fiscal year 2019 refugee ceiling would be slashed further to a mere 30,000 who would be given refuge. That's why I introduced the GRACE Act, legislation that would prevent a U.S. president from setting a presidential determination on refugee admissions at a level below 95,000 in a given fiscal year. We should not close our hearts or our doors to refugees seeking a better life for their families. On the second front of his assault, the Trump administration is employing draconian enforcement policies and aggressive policing practices. Under President Trump's leadership, the administration has unleashed a merciless deportation force. As just one example, over the past 2 years, ICE has targeted sponsors of unaccompanied children. These are children under age 18 who have no lawful immigration status and who have no parent or legal guardian in the United States. In these cases, the Office of Refugee Resettlement must try to identify a sponsor to whom it can release the child. But from late July to late November 2018, ICE arrested 170 potential sponsors of unaccompanied children. 64% of them had no criminal record. Not only did these practices subject countless law-abiding immigrants to enforcement actions, they also deterred potential sponsors of these children from coming forward and providing much-needed care for these vulnerable children. And finally, the third front is the overhaul of our immigration courts, turning them into a deportation pipeline. President Trump has drastically reshaped our immigration courts to hasten deportations and undermine immigrants' due process rights. Under Trump, the Attorney General has used his authority to restrict the discretion of immigration judges and unilaterally reinterpret immigration law. For instance, one of our speakers, Angelica, will speak to how former Attorney General Jeff Sessions used his authority to limit her claim for asylum by ruling that claims pertaining to domestic violence or gang violence generally should not qualify for asylum. All of these policy changes on each of these fronts function in concert with one another, working to erase the existence of immigrants in the United States. Taken together, it makes clear that the Trump administration is the most anti-immigrant administration in the history of the United States. The people here know firsthand how this unrelenting assault on immigrants is impacting our economy, our social fabric, and America's standing in the world. Unless we make a stand now, the Trump administration's anti-immigrant agenda will leave a stain on our nation and forever upend the very foundation of democracy in the United States. I hope this report helps to pull back the curtain and shed light on the changes that have been occurring without fanfare, but with terribly destructive consequences. The American public must know what the Trump administration is doing in their name. It is absolutely a disgrace what the Trump administration is doing to the immigrant community in the United States. And that is why we are here. And that is why I assembled this report, so that we could shed a light on what Donald Trump and his administration are doing to terrorize unnecessarily an immigrant community in our country that does not deserve the treatment which it has been receiving. So let me then begin by introducing Deanie Paulino of the Chelsea Collaborative. She is the Chief Operating Officer and our host here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you, everyone. Can you stand me, please? I'm speaking today on behalf of our members that have endured and suffered a lot of these issues around immigration. It is great pleasure to welcome you to the Chelsea Collaborative this morning. Thanks, Senator Markey, for being here and continue prioritizing our immigrant community as part of your agenda. Thanks to our city officials, City Manager Tony Brusino, Dr. Burke, Superintendent, and Chief Kais. We are very lucky to have such a great team working for our community every single day. Also want to thank our sister organization, La Comunidad, that is also here, the Lawyers for Civil Rights, and the Greater Boston Legal Services for working side by side with us in defending and protecting our community. I welcome you to a wonderful city where more than 50% of its residents are immigrants. I invite you to walk the streets of Chelsea. You will see that they will receive you with a smile. You will see a hardworking community that often hold two jobs in order to sustain their families, that are grateful for the opportunity to be living in this country. A community that had fled violence to provide a safe place to raise their own family. You will see how our members have made Chelsea their home. They have created and owned businesses. They've been active members of the community and also help their fellow neighbor. Of immigrant families are the fabric that makes this such an amazing city. But for the past 2.5 years, of immigrant community members don't feel safe. Today, Senator Markey released the Under the Radar report. This report reinforces what the collaborative sees every single day in our community. The immigration policy being implemented by this administration is having a devastating effect on our families and community. As a small nonprofit organization, our office is filled every single day with community members in need of health support and advice. And we have to, even so that we have to extend of office hours to be able to accommodate their demand. Our members are afraid of the presence of ICE in the court system. We have victims of domestic violence too afraid to seek protective orders against abuse partners. Unpaid workers fear going to court to claim money owed to them. Only last month, we were able to obtain more than $120,000 in back wages to only a group of 5 employees, families that were not able to pay rent or provide for their children. We have witnesses that are witness of fraud and are very reluctant to collaborate with the law enforcement, but we are thankful that in collaboration with the police department, the Chelsea police is able to come to our office and to take the report. We see working families afraid to use public assistance, program when they most need it. The idea to penalize the use of social safety net is cruel and inhumane and un-American, forcing non-citizen families to choose between access to life savings benefit and or protect the immigration status. So today, I thank you, Senator, once again, for pushing this conversation. This is a silent crisis. We need to continue to stand against injustice and protect human rights. I look forward in working with the entire community to look for solutions to save our community. Thank you.
And now I would like to introduce a great leader for Massachusetts, Ava Malone from Mira.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And Senator, first I want to thank you for your amazing leadership and your long-term commitment to immigrants and refugees, and also for releasing this wonderful report. And many thanks to your amazing staff as well. And also Chelsea Collaborative, thank you for hosting, and thank you for the amazing work that you all do. I speak on behalf of the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. We are the largest institution in New England, working hard to protect the rights and integration of immigrants and refugees across New England and also nationally. Why is this report so important? We knew these things already, but it's incredibly invaluable to have them documented systematically and with supporting evidence and detail. It's important to show the big picture. The barrage of attacks on immigrants is so constant and overwhelming that it's easy to lose any sense of perspective, and we cannot afford that. What emerges from this report should disturb every American. The Trump administration has launched an all-out attack on immigrants and refugees, touching on every aspect of our immigration system, using every lever available to cause pain. It's thorough and exhaustive, meant to cause total destruction. We need to understand that and respond accordingly. There are many themes that emerge from this report, but I'm going to focus on just 2. First, the report uses the word corrupting to describe what the administration is doing to our immigration system. And that is spot on. Our system is complex. It's difficult to navigate, but it has many carefully built safeguards to ensure due process, fairness, and justice. But one after another, the policies of this administration has undermined due process, hijacked federal, state, and local institutions to detain and deport immigrants, and pushed honorable public servants to violate human rights and federal law. The Trump administration's deportation campaign, it's not about law and order. It's the opposite of law and order. It corrupts and undermines our legal system. Second, it is clear that the bad hombres have very little to do with these policies. These changes have overwhelmingly affected people who want to obey the law, do the right thing, and follow the rules. Refugees, for instance. Refugees are the most thoroughly vetted people in the world, but they now face enormous and absurd hurdles to enter this country. Immigrants who try to adjust status, those who apply to get a green card, may be arrested during a routine interview. They are no longer told if there is a problem with their papers until they are denied. And if they are denied, they go straight to removal proceedings. Similarly, through the process of public charge rule, the administrations want to shut out legal immigrants if they're not wealthy and if they're not in good health. Worst of all, this report, thorough as it is, already is incomplete. The attacks continue every day, and we expect them to escalate in 2020. So we need to make sure that everybody reads this report. Our elected officials recognize the seriousness of this situation, speak out, and confront these policies. What's happening right now is historic in the worst possible way. We deeply appreciate the report that the senator worked and his team, and we encourage all Massachusetts leaders, public at large, policymakers, lawmakers, and members of Congress across America to do the same. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to welcome to the podium Angelica for her remarks. We have an interpreter for her.
Hola, mi nombre es Angélica González.
Hi, my name is Angelica Gonzalez.
Y mi historia es, yo soy una de las más afectadas de los cambios de leyes del señor presidente Donald Trump.
I am one of the most affected people in this situation in Trump's administration.
Yo entré a este país en el año 2018.
I entered the country in 2018.
Estoy solicitando asilo en este país por violencia doméstica.
I am seeking asylum due to domestic violence.
Y me ha informado mi abogada Susan George que han limitado mi proceso de asilo en este lugar por violencia.
My attorney, Susan Church, has informed me that my case has been limited due to the facts of domestic violence.
En mi caso de asilo, el que yo vengo a solicitar es por violencia doméstica que he sufrido en mi país extremadamente.
I am seeking asylum due to extreme circumstances of domestic violence in my country.
Voy a hablarles parte de esa situación.
I will be speaking about my situation.
Yo a los 16 años fui secuestrada por personas armadas.
At 16, I was kidnapped by armed people.
Y a raíz de todo esto he sufrido bastante violencia y discriminación en mi país.
Due to this, I've been suffering a lot of violence and discrimination in my country.
Y es por eso que en mi hogar pues, sufría mucho de golpes, maltratos, insultos y he temido mucho por mi vida.
At my home, I've been suffered due to beatings and punches on my family due to this.
Y he venido a este país a pedir apoyo, a pedir ayuda, porque yo sí quiero vivir y quiero darle una mejor vida a mi hija.
That's why I'm seeking asylum in this country, to be able to give my daughter a better life.
Porque no quisiera que a ella también la secuestraran a la misma edad que a mí o más pequeña y sufriera las mismas consecuencias, si no es que nos quitaran la vida en nuestro país por maltratarnos.
I do not wish this on my daughter due to during her age. She is very young. I do not wish her to be kidnapped at the age I was, and I want her to have a better life.
Pero cuando yo entré a este país a solicitar, a pedir ayuda, a solicitar asilo, me encuentro con una gran historia que me separan de mi hija y se la llevan de mi lado.
When I entered the country, I prolong a whole story where my daughter is taken away from me.
A sus 7 años de mi hija la separan de mí sin decirme a dónde la llevaban y me decían y me daban información sobre ella.
She is only 7 years old, and at the border she was separated from me, and I was not told where she was going nor any information about her.
Y en mi desesperación yo preguntaba, como madre yo me desesperé, yo estaba preocupada, yo necesitaba verla, saber dónde estaba y nadie me daba ninguna información sobre ella.
As a desperate mother, I was wondering all these questions. I wanted answers, and no one was giving me any answers to these questions I had about my daughter.
Y la he buscado mucho y nadie me daba información. Cuando yo le pregunto a un oficial de migración, antes de quitármela, él me pregunta que si en mi tierra celebran el Día de la Madre. Yo le digo que sí. Y en señal de burla, él me dice, pues feliz Día de la Madre, te vamos a quitar a tu hija, sin dar más información.
At the border, when the immigration officer took my daughter from me, asked me if they celebrate Mother's Day where I am from, and I answered yes, and making fun of her, told her, Happy Mother's Day, I'm taking your daughter away from you.
Y estoy entonces solicitando aquí a este país que me regalen el derecho de tener asilo en este país para vivir al lado de mi hija y verla a ella crecer con una vida mejor y no como crecí yo.
I am requesting asylum here in the United States so I can give my daughter the better life, and my daughter does not deserve the life I live in my country.
Esas son mis palabras y muchísimas gracias.
These are my words. Thank you very much.
Again, we are joined here by Brian Kais, the Chelsea Police Chief. We thank you so much. And to Tom Ambrosino, who was a great mayor of the city of Revere. Now he's the city manager here in Chelsea. We very much appreciate your being here. And to our outgoing school superintendent, thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you do for this community. It is absolutely amazing. And now, finally, I'd like to ask Katie if she would come up and make some comments.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you all for being here. My name is Katie Hernandez. My husband, Carlos, was placed into removal proceedings in 2008. In 2010, his attorneys and the prosecutor all agreed to administratively close the deportation order, assuring him that he was in no danger. In 2015, Carlos and I were married. We had the wedding at my parents' home in California. Carlos and I had worked together for a long time. Our restaurant owner, all of our good friends, and our coworkers attended, and it was really wonderful. Just after my birthday in January of 2018, mind you, we had waited 3 years to finally be given the opportunity to attest to the validity of our marriage to immigration offices. And we were finally granted that privilege, and we were so excited to be moving our case along to get my husband legal status in this country where I'm a citizen. So our meeting was at the Lawrence Immigration Office, and we basically had to convince a complete stranger that our marriage and the home that we own together and the son that we welcomed together a year prior were not an elaborate hoax to defraud the government, that our life was real, and our family was real, and our love was real, and it's a surreal experience in and of itself, the marriage interview. Anyway, we passed. We answered a bunch of questions about our time together, and the woman said congratulations, stamped our paperwork, stood up, shook our hands, and said, you know, congratulations, you passed this interview, you're free to move on to the next phase of your proceeding. So the weight of the world was removed from our shoulders. We were so thrilled and relieved, and we could breathe in that moment. As we're heading towards the door, she stopped us, and she said, there's just one more thing that we need to talk to you about before you leave here today. If you'll please follow me. So we did, and she led us down the world's longest hallway and into the very back of the building to a large conference room, a large conference table, and nobody in it. She told us to sit down and that somebody would be right with us. So we sat and we waited and talked about sandwiches we were going to get as soon as we got out of here, when two large men walked into the room, and one of them stood up in front of us and the other one stood behind us, blocking the door. And it was shocking in retrospect how long it took me to realize that these were ICE officers. I was so ill prepared for it. Our attorney had told us that administrative close, there is no risk of detention at this. You just go and tell your love story and everything's gonna be fine. Nothing's gonna happen to you. I don't even need to be present. Nobody has ever been detained under your circumstances before in this country. So when these officers explained to us that even though my husband had committed no crimes, and even though we were just doing what we had been told to do, and we were just showing up when we were told to show up, that they were taking him to prison. I knew there must have been some kind of mistake, and I explained to them that no, our attorney told us that his case was still on administrative close, and he said that doesn't matter anymore. So at that point, they exited me out from the building. My pastor, Joan McPherson, thank God, was there to drive me home. My husband spent 2 weeks in federal prison. And for 2 weeks, I had to make up stories to tell my kids about where their dad was. My attorney, Susan Church, was able to file for bond for us. The hearing lasted 5 minutes. The prosecutors, nobody could believe that this had happened. There was no precedent for this. So he was granted bond. We were so excited, and we anteed up and decided we could continue the process right where we had left off. But no, there was another change in that span of time. We could no longer finish our 601A waiver process that we had started in Lawrence and been approved for in Lawrence without taking a removal order or something called voluntary departure. It's extremely dangerous. My husband, Carlos, is from El Salvador, which is, according to the World Economic Forum, the third most dangerous country in this world. And I don't want to have to go back there. We went to court again 2 months ago. The lawyer told us there had been another change. Now we were allowed to apply for cancellation of removal because Roberto had been here for 10 years. Our pastor was with us again, our friends from church, my whole family. We jumped for joy. We were all hugging in the waiting room, celebrating. But just yesterday, I spoke with my attorney, Susan Church, who told us that lower immigration courts have issued a ruling undermining the Supreme Court's decision, putting our latest form of relief on hold. I'm here to share this story. I am an American citizen. Both of our children are American citizens in this country. My husband has committed no crime. All we want is the ability to live in the country that we love, free from fear of losing this cherished member of our family. Thank you all so much for listening to my story and for being here. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Katie, so much. Thank you for your powerful story. That's why we're here. We're here to talk about these families, these individual heartbreaking stories that America historically has tried to open their arms to welcome people who are in need of refuge, who are in need of asylum, in need of protection. That is not happening right now under the Donald Trump administration. So let me return and ask anyone if they may have a question for Dini or for Ava or for Angelica or Katie. Yes, ma'am.
Obviously, this report goes over a host of explicit and some less overt ways immigrants are being affected, but a lot of this we already knew or we've seen happening in Massachusetts and other states. So what is your office working on to actually tackle some of these issues? What are some of the newer solutions your office is working on?
Well, we begin with moving legislation on the TPS individuals, on the DACA, young people in our country. That legislation is now moving out of the United States House of Representatives over to the Senate. We're getting ready to have another monumental battle over those issues. And it's a battle worth having. The American people have to understand what Donald Trump is doing and what the Republicans are doing in aiding and abetting him in implementing such draconian policies. Temporary protected status is something that we've always granted. And the president is just turning a blind eye to so many people who need help. And the same thing is true with these DACA young people in our country. We need a fight on the floor of the House of Representatives and on the floor of the United States Senate this year on those issues. And on these other issues, we need to raise the profile of them. What is happening in our country so that they get injected into the 2020 presidential race, so that the American people understand, again, what is being done to all of these people in their name. Yes? Who are you with?
Carlos Matos, myself.
Oh, no, this is just for the press, okay? I can talk to you later on.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Sarah Van Corbett, Commonwealth Magazine. Can you talk a little bit about what the report has to say about immigration courts and sort of the loss of due process rights?
Yeah, and that is our concern. Our concern is that increasingly they truncate the rights of individuals to be able to have due process. And we just heard Katie's case where there was absolutely no reason for her to assume with her husband that her rights, her family's rights would be so severely impacted while she was peacefully with her husband going through a legal process without any charges of criminality against him. So that's a dramatic change in American policy, and from my perspective, it is something that we're just going to have to highlight. We are still a country of laws and not of men or women, and it's up to us to ensure that we protect them. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, he's,
Yes. Who are you with?
I'm with Spirit Change News.
With what?
Spirit Change News.
I mean, do you want to speak to that issue that was just raised?
I actually think that one answers to your question.
Okay,
So
come on
it's-
over. Yeah, please come in. And
Steph
Ava-
Solis with
Ava
Mass.
the same way, yeah.
Thank you. To your question, I think that, as Senator, as politician, we obviously need to push some of the legislations. As a community-based organization with, partnering with me and other community-based organizations across the state, in particular in Boston and in Chelsea, I think that we need to come together and start really collecting some data of how these immigrations are training our community. For example, how many people are afraid of going to the court system? How many people are losing their wages because employers are not paying them? And the actual impact that has in our economy. For example, how many DACA, live right now in Chelsea, or how many TPS business owners are right now in Chelsea? So I think that we need to collectively work together. And we have a couple lawsuits pending. We're working with the Mexican American immigration to work, lawyers immigration to work around the lawsuit on the citizenship question. That's one. Two, lawsuit around ICE in the court. So that maybe is another way to raise an awareness and educate the people on the impact of this policy that it has in our community, in the immigrant community.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, my question is more like, what surprised you with the report when you saw it, and kind of, who helped you put it together, like, who was working on this and all that?
Yeah, well, my staff worked for 2 months to compile everything that is happening so that it is all in one place at one time so that we can see what is being done during the Trump administration years. And when you see it in its totality, when this report is actually compiled, it's no longer a series of stories that seem unattached to each other. You can see that it's a systematic attack on immigrants in our country. And it's not just one policy or another or another or another. Seeing them all together, you can see that a fundamental change has taken place. And again, that's why I pointed out the number of refugees that we're allowing into our country. This is inscribed on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. Give us your poor, your sick, your whole masses. And instead, what Donald Trump is saying to them is we're shutting the door. We are no longer a place where those who are in need of refuge because of suffering that is being imposed upon them back in their home country is something they can no longer tolerate for them and their families. So put together, it's kind of a comprehensive view of it, and I thought it would be important, especially because we're the leaders here in Massachusetts on immigration. And Ava, do you want to come over and
One
say something?
quick comment to the importance of the report and the timing of it. We know that immigration is a federal issue and it's becoming the political one in Congress, and things are not moving to the interest of the American people. But it's also important for the Massachusetts lawmakers to pay attention to this report, because there are a lot of things that can happen at the state level that would make lives easier for everyone residing in our Commonwealth. And I wanted to call attention specifically to a bill that is pending in the legislature, the Safe Communities Act, which would provide basic rights for victims of domestic violence and other. It's very basic, a basic bill. It's common sense for people to know their rights. For instance, as a story that you heard, people should be prepared and that they should know their rights, what is expected or what can happen or what the law is. And I wanted also to remind everybody that immigration violations are civil violations, so people being detained for civil violation and sent to federal prison, it's unacceptable. And Massachusetts legislature has an opportunity to act and provide the protections for all people of our Commonwealth.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much for coming. Much appreciated.